Hello, everybody. Today I'm with Xochitl Wilson. Xochitl is a good friend of mine. We've known each other for a little bit, right, Xochitl?
A lot of it. Way too long for a very long time.
But yes, we've been good friends for a while, and I invited you here today, Xochitl, so we can have a conversation on addiction and family, right? So
Yep.
very similar to me, you personally have never dabbled in drugs
Drugs.
or alcohol,
Mhm.
and but you've had family and friends that have lived that lifestyle similar to me. So, and also something else we share in common is that you and I are first generation immigrants, right?
Yep.
Our families came here for a better life, a better way of life, more opportunities.
Right.
And so sometimes for me personally, it's been frustrating to see how family doesn't appreciate that,
Yeah.
doesn't understand that they kind of go their own way and do their own
Mhm.
thing, everything opposite of what they should do,
Yeah.
right? So tell me a little bit about what you've encountered in your family.
Wow. So many loaded questions within that. So yes, indirectly, like yourself, um, I've been affected by addiction, drug addiction, with my sibling, with my brother, and I only have one sibling. So I think that adds even additional heartache and pain because there's no other siblings, right? You have more siblings, but I only have one, so it's just he and I, and he's older than me, and so yeah, it. I don't know that we'll have enough time to talk about everything and how the dynamic of the family actually gets affected and the stages the family goes through. And yourself as a sibling, what you experience, what you do, how you're feeling, how you're um, reacting to that, what you take in, how you behave, your own outlook, right, to the situation. Again, friends, that have unfortunately also dabbled into these addictions and are better. So, good news is things are much better. Things can get better. If anything, that should be the takeaway today, that if you want to, um, if you really put the effort in it, you will get better. Things can get better. The family will be better. And as far as you bring up such a good point, because I think for so many families that are first generation kids of immigrants, I think it just brings on, with addiction, there's just so many variables that can affect or why a person decides, or I can't say decide because sometimes it's not even a choice, is they are utilizing whatever, their choice of addictive behavior is, because that's what it is, right? It's not necessarily just drugs or alcohol. It could be food, it could be gambling, it could be sex addiction, it could be where you're just working out, exercising for long periods of time. There's just so many behavioral choices that can fit into this addiction. So your environment has a lot to do with that. It's not just genetic, it's not just physiological, right? And all these things play a part in it, but sometimes you don't necessarily have to have the genes, the genetic predisposition for it, but your environment affects you so much. So as immigrants, you're coming into a completely different country, right? Something completely unaware, new to you. And in a developing brain, I came here as a very young child. My brother's 4 years older than me, so he was still a child in elementary school. We have developing brains, and transitioning into that, I've never had this conversation with him to really know, to see if that was a lot of the issues, right? I can't say that we were ever abused or anything like that. That's not the kind of family I have, and I'm very fortunate. And you've met my parents, but I'm very fortunate to know that, to have been raised by two parents, by a mom and a dad. And that's very important. And a lot of the individuals that you've interviewed unfortunately don't have that, right? So that alone is already one precursor to why they have this addiction. But again, that wasn't us. So as I've researched, as I've looked into what causes these behaviors or these addictions, I know that's not one. It wasn't because we didn't have a mom or a dad. We had both. But your environment, what was my brother exposed to versus what I was exposed to, and now we're having to think of this gender difference, right? The boys versus the girls, the male versus females, the things and how they see things, how you males see things compared to how we see them, how we feel them versus how you feel them, how we deal with them versus how you deal with them as a male. And this is scientifically proven, boy brains versus girl brains are completely different. We function completely different. We could be in the exact same situation and we are going to respond completely different, right? And so that's really important for any of the parents that are listening to us right now to understand. You cannot treat your boy and your girl the exact same way, love them equally, yes. But the way they're going to respond and the type of nurturing that they need is going to be a little different because of the way our brain functions. And so this transition, this move, from a country to a new country, new teachers, you left your old friends, and even though you're with your immediate family, right? It's not like we were separated from our parents. With our parents, and then we had family here already, so it's not like we were completely new, left out to kind of fend for ourselves. That was not the thing. So we had family, and immediate family that we lived very close to, and we had these relationships with our cousins that were like brothers and sisters. We were just an extension, right? But I'm wondering if that transition, that move, immigrating from one country to another had such an impact on my brother's developing brain. And then the additional things that, we get exposed to out when we're out of the house, right? Because we are bombarded with things. It could be drugs, it could be, all these things, right? And so the peer pressure that comes with that as a boy, I don't know, it could have been just little things, little by little, that were building up. And boys aren't necessarily taught to fully express themselves, for you men to express yourselves, you suppress. And so the brain is very intelligent and it learns how to protect itself. And you end up coping in different ways, right? And so there comes these addictions. And again, it could be any of the things that I mentioned earlier. And so it could have been that, so the outside, environmental exposures, social exposures, your brain, wasn't taught, maybe my parents didn't know at that time that, hey, these are things that we need to focus on. Again, we're in a new country, so it's that they're learning to assimilate themselves here, and keeping us in as best as they can in line, right? Because we were raised, you respect your teachers, you are in a new country, you follow the rules, the laws, don't get out of line, everything is tracked here, that if you do something wrong, it is written somewhere, there is a record, right? So, those things were instilled in us, and so to see that trend of events that started slowly, now as an adult, I could see that. Of course, I was a child then, and I probably didn't notice it as much as I do now, or I can recognize it. But I think all these things were just slowly developing, and when parents are unaware or uninformed of what's going on, they're not going to catch it, because they just think, no, it's just they're being rebellious, the typical boy attitude, or just typical behavior as a teenager or whatnot. And you don't really realize that it's far more than that, right? Until it starts really getting at hand. And then so slowly but surely that happened, and just one thing led to another. It became worse and worse and worse. And I'm talking about years and years, probably 2 decades. it's a long time for a family to go through something like that and not be broken, you know. Personally, I feel my challenge was I need to, and not because I needed to be, but I didn't want to give my parents any more heartache and stress. That I became very disciplined. Like, I'm going to school, I'm going to be a straight A student, I'm going to be an honor student, I'm going to college. I would try not to give them any issues, because if their attention needed to be somewhere, it needed to be with my brother in case there was a call. And there was always those calls. Always those calls. If it wasn't because he was in jail, it was because he was very close to dying. And it wasn't close to dying because of his addiction. He was in a place that he shouldn't have been. And, when you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, those things can happen, right? And so that was a very traumatic moment, not just obviously for my parents, but for myself. And so, as I got older, then I realized that some of the things that were affecting me were probably because of that, because I was coping in my own way, but it wasn't necessarily the most healthiest. And mind you, I was coping as best as I possibly could, because I was, I eat well, at least what I thought was very healthy. I would work out, but I ended up realizing I was developing anxiety and panic attacks and OCD because of my anxiety. And that's nothing compared to anything that you have, showed on your videos. Like, I'm not comparing anything. I'm voicing and sharing something that many siblings are probably going through, right? That they don't even realize. They're not putting two and two together, that it's because of this that they're suffering that, right? And so I took it upon myself. I was in my early 20s, and I said, this is not good, because my OCD was it was affecting my daily life. I was one of those that, oh my gosh, did I turn off my iron? Did I turn off my curling iron? Did I lock the door? I got to the point where I would have to drive back and check the doors. And, you've heard a lot of those people that's like, they have to shake the door like 2 or 3 times, right? Or they do that for a lot of things. And so I was, beginning to do that. It was taking a lot of my time. I was color coordinating a lot of things, and it would stress me out more if I didn't see it, And I finally got to the point, I'm like, this is not healthy, this is not healthy, the anxiety that I was getting. Even just thinking about it now, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. But so I sought help. And to anyone out there suffering from anxiety, any mental, any kind of anything, help is okay. It is okay to accept help, no matter what it is. You are not crazy. And I think in our culture, receiving help, mental help, is still taboo a little bit, but it shouldn't be. We need to talk about it. And my parents didn't know. I think they still don't know. But I did that for myself. Because I recognized that it wasn't healthy for me. Those weren't healthy behaviors or patterns that I was developing. And so that took a while. I'd say about a year, just based on, because my issue may not have been as big as other things, but it was still affecting me. The biggest takeaway I can give you from that is that we do not have control over anybody else but ourselves. And so the minute we learn to recognize that and accept it, then we can move forward. I learned I couldn't control my brother. There was nothing I was going to be able to do to help him, because that's something that he was going to have to decide for himself. And you've said that many times in your videos. As a matter of fact, I think in your last live call, there was mention to that, and you say that often. And that is true. We cannot. You can suggest, recommend, bring light to, inform, provide resources, but until they're ready, right? And sometimes even, having those breakthroughs or these moments where you would think they've hit rock bottom, they're gonna get it. Nope, they're not. It's gonna take multiple of those rock bottom moments, and they may still not get it. So knowing that has been my takeaway since then. We're talking about quite a few years, and I implement that in most of what I do. I have no control over anybody else, but I do have control over my reactions, what I do and how I let certain things affect me, right? And so I think that's very important, to know that you have no control, and you kind of have to reconcile that there's nothing that you did that caused that individual. For a lot of people, that is not the case, right? Because I think you shared this with the video you did with your mom and your brother, where it's not because it was a family. There was just an outside factors that push that individual into that, right? And so to reconcile that you have no control over somebody else, I think that's very important, because then you can start healing. You can do whatever you need to for yourself, and be ready for when that person, when your son, daughter, your loved one, brother, sister comes back, and then you're ready, you're whole to receive them and say, okay, we're still here to support you, and we love you, right? Because there's that forgiveness and that needs to happen as well. I was very resentful for a very long time, and resent is not good. It eats away at you, and you become very bitter. And so through that, I learned to let go of that resentment, and I think that's really important as well. And I think I said so much. I don't know if I answered what you wanted.
Absolutely, yeah. That's very interesting. I've known you so long, and never would I have thought that you guys have gone through so much, right? Because it's something that only the family knows, right? Yes. It's kind of sometimes like a secret, right? It's not really discussed because it's taboo, especially in our culture. It's not something you broadcast,
or nobody else understands because they're not going through,
Right. So how is your brother now? How are your parents doing now? More importantly, how are you doing?
My brother's doing great. He's I don't even know at what moment it just, the light went off, but it did, and we're very grateful. In the meantime, while that happened, he had 2 children, right? And I'm gonna try not to lose it. But my parents ended up having to raise, and I will include myself on there. I helped my parents raise his daughter, and so to me, she's like my daughter, and we're good. We're healthy. We survived it, and I think that's really important for people to know that you have to stay strong. You have to just keep doing what you're doing. And in a way, I think maybe having my niece, because she's the oldest of my brother, that probably gave all of us a little bit more of that drive, like, we have to make sure we're okay, and we stay together, and that we do what we can, for this little girl. And she's good, you've met her, you've met her child too. And so we're good. Now, can I say that there isn't, stress there that's lingered, that has caused, other issues? Luckily, health-wise, we're all healthy. But for a moment there, the stress of not knowing where your child is at, or if you're going to get a call. And when you do get that call, what kind of call is that going to be? I can't imagine. I don't have children, and I cannot imagine what parents feel, knowing that they may get a call that's not going to be good, And so thinking of that, I just, again, but we have no control over it. But to think of it, I can't imagine what my parents felt, or not hearing from your, from your son or your daughter, your sibling, that you haven't heard from them, the many, holidays that they missed out on, and then the moments that they were around, that you wanted that last forever, and then it didn't, and the hopes that, they're recovering, they're doing good, and then 6 months later they're back to where they were at, so it's like this cycle that we went through for so long. I don't know, we're good. To answer your question, we're good, we're healthy, we are all in much better place, like emotionally, in that sense, where there's no resentment, nobody's throwing anything in each other's faces, we care for each other, we protect each other, we keep ourselves healthy, I do as best as I can, especially because that's what I do for a living, but I try to keep my parents as healthy as they possibly can, because I want them around for as long as I can have them. But it was a very long time. It took a long time. It wasn't easy, and the I guess the PTSD, and I'd say C, because there's a complex post-traumatic stress that is probably, it lingers a little bit more. Behavior-wise, I think that's what needs to be worked on constantly, daily, so that people can move forward. And so, yeah, it's been a work, and for me personally, it's been a work in progress. I do whatever I can to keep myself healthy, emotionally, physically, mentally, because otherwise, if I don't, our body, it's like a car, right? If one part is not working, the rest of the car eventually, right, there's a little domino effect, it's going to break down. Our body is the exact same way. Our brain and our body, they talk to each other continuously. So if we are physically, ill, our brain is going to suffer that. If our brain is missing something, right? Because genetically there's people that have depression and a chemical imbalance, right? So if your brain isn't well, your body isn't. So it's this balance that we have to understand and work that we need to do for ourselves to find ourselves, in a happier, healthier place. But if we don't know how to recognize that, then it's a little more difficult. So I'm fortunate, I'm aware, and that I could do that for myself. But I think what you're doing is also helping bring more awareness to that, because it's not just one thing. There's so many variables that lead these individuals into addiction, but they can get out.
Absolutely. I think it's important to continue to have these type of discussions with people, right? And so that's why we're recording this, so that others that have been in your place that can understand and relate to some of what you're saying, and coping mechanisms, and it doesn't just affect the person dealing with that addiction. It's a lot, 100 family. People behind them. Yeah. So I'm really happy to hear that you're okay, your brother's okay, and your family, your parents, lovely people. I respect them so much, and I love talking to them. They're amazing, hardworking, individuals that have. I think they've been successful, with you, even with your brother, because I've seen the love that they have for each other. So, thank you for sharing. And what are you doing now? I know that you went to ASU. You got a degree in nutrition. What are you doing?
Management. Yeah, I'm a certified health coach. And so, although I have a 9-to-5, but my passion, and I think it's through all these experiences, but also through my professional experiences, there's so much awareness that we need to bring into our communities. And there were also, or have been also, some health issues that I've had that have led me to do my own research, become my own guinea pig per se, and see what's affecting me, what isn't. And so I decided to become a health coach. And so I do have a YouTube channel. You guys can find me at The Wellness Bee. And I provide information in regards to health, how we have control over our health. We don't have to necessarily depend on anyone, There are so many conditions out there, chronic diseases, that we have full control over. Just like we talked about addiction, I don't know, at some point we probably need to add addiction into these chronic diseases, because it affects so many people. And it can start from, because I had a back injury, I started taking medication, and now it leads to this addiction, right? So it could start at any point, at any age, right? And so those are some of those reasons why I decided to become a holistic health coach, because we have control over doing that ourselves, and to not be so dependent on pharmaceuticals to do the job. Working through addiction, which I don't have experience with because directly, right? It's hard work. And I could see that there may be a lot of people that are afraid of doing the hard work, because they're going to face a lot of demons, right? And a lot of people aren't equipped to face those. And so teaching the individuals how to cope with them and say, it's okay, you are going to be okay as you move through it, right? I think that's really important. So keeping yourself healthy physically, mentally, emotionally, that's really important. So those are the areas I focus in and share and bring awareness to. I also have a podcast with a really great colleague of mine, and you can find us at in Salud, buzzsprout.com. We upload episodes on a monthly basis, and it's a very light-hearted podcast where we talk about, all these public health issues, again, in a very light-hearted way, but that are specific to our community. And I think that's so important to note, that we need to have more, more of us that talk directly, that know the community, right? We've lived in it. We have that lived-in experience. We can relate, whether directly or indirectly. And so that is the awareness that I, joyfully, bring light to and inform. So, yeah, you guys.
I'm going to add links to your podcast and your YouTube channel. Yep. The wellness be on the video description. I think I see some correlation between what you're doing and what I'm doing. It's bring awareness, but also healing.
Yes.
Right? Because my biggest fan is my mom, my family.
Yeah.
Your biggest fan, your mom, your dad, your brother, your family. Because they see that's how you're dealing with what you've gone through.
It's our therapy.
It is. It's very therapeutic, and we're helping ourselves, our loved ones, and the community at large that has no idea. Because there are people out there, just like our family, I feel alone, I don't know who to turn to, can't call the police, they don't care, they don't understand. Yeah. But so it has to be us, right? Yeah. We have to be the foundation, the pillars of the community, because we've been through it in some way, shape, or form, right? Yeah. Maybe not directly, but indirectly. I felt my mom's pain, right? Despair, not knowing what to do, where to go to, right? And I've dealt with it in my own way, but by having these conversations and really trying to educate the community at large, I think that's beneficial. I think there's a lot of good that comes out of it, right?
And I think, and to add to that, it's kind of our civic duty, right? I've said this before. I think I left a comment on one of your many videos that you have. It is our civic duty, because if we sit behind our screen, behind our phone, right, to make comments, when you upload your videos, but we're not doing anything. What are we doing? We can't sit and complain about something and not do anything about it. So it's in part of our responsibility. What are we doing to help? And you don't necessarily have to help monetarily, right? But we can volunteer. You put these events, people can come out and volunteer, they can donate. Those are things that can help. Don't complain about your community being dirty. There's all this trash. Get up and start cleaning, right? That is part of our civic duty. So we can't necessarily sit there and complain if we're doing nothing about it. And so what are we doing about it? I leave your audience with that. It's, what are you doing about it? What are you doing for yourself first? Because, we have to heal as well. But for your community, for your neighborhood, what are you doing about it,
Lost in Phoenix community, Xochitl has given you a direct challenge. What are you doing, right? So, so in the donation drive that I had in November, a lot of people came out, right?
Yes.
Because of that little seed that I'm planting. What are you doing? Come out and help. Doesn't have, like you mentioned, doesn't have to be monetarily. You don't have no money. Times are tough. I understand, but you have time to pick up trash.
I mean, you had someone come from a different state to help.
Somebody drove from California just to check it out, and so that is the inspiration that we all have, right? To plant a seed in people, to help out and be more aware of what's going on out in society and how can we help and make a difference, right? So thank you very much, Xochitl, for joining me today to have a conversation. Very insightful. I get to know you guys a little bit better of the struggles that you've gone through, and I'm glad to hear that your family is doing a lot better. I'm really glad to you're a big advocate and big supporter of Lost in Phoenix, because you see there's a lot of good intentions behind it and trying to help people, right? And so thank you very much for all your support. Thank you for everything you do, and we'll stay in touch, okay?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Your viewers are great. I mean, I see your videos all the time. You have such a great support. This was such a great opportunity you've had. However it came about, right? But what you are doing is helping so many people. We've already seen that it's helped quite a few families, and so continue doing what you're doing. You have my support, and I know you have the support of so many other people. So it's great. Thanks for your time and having me here.
Thank you.